into the Bhagavad Gita. So a couple of weeks ago, we spoke at 5th chapter we're on, Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness. We spoke a couple of weeks ago on text 23. So just recapping on that, it's saying there about if one can tolerate the urges of the senses, And that's very similar to the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction, Shikshamrita, very similar. Tolerate the urges of the material senses and desire and anger, as well situated and happy in this world. So interestingly, is saying there, not that before we die, because it's saying that before we give up the present body, so before death, we should have mastered that ability to tolerate the urges. It's not saying that there won't be any urges, but just the fact that when the urges come, which they may keep coming up till death, but that we learn how to tolerate them. It doesn't mean that a liberated person doesn't have any desires, material desires, coming into the mind. It doesn't mean that the anger never comes, or the desires never come, or through the different senses, different impulses come. No, they're going to keep coming. But that as we become self-realized more and more on the path of liberation, then we learn how to tolerate them. And it's the same thing in the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. It says one who can tolerate the urges. Dhira. So tolerance is a very important quality. So so you all understand what to tolerate it means? What does it mean to tolerate? What do you think it means to tolerate the urges? Or to tolerate desires, or to tolerate anger? What does that mean?
Control, patience with them.
Yeah, control. And what's that, Sarah?
I was going to say, and not acting on them.
Not acting on it. Yeah, not acting on it. You tolerate it. And you don't act on it. So the waves of desires come into the mind through the eyes and the nose and the ears. The different senses. The different impulses are coming through the senses and different desires. I want to eat this, want to smell this, want to taste this, want to be with this person, or whatever like that. But you just tolerate it, learn to tolerate these different things. And of course, some things that come into the mind, we might not tolerate them. We might act on them. Like, in what situation would we act on these different impulses and desires that come into our mind?
I can think
because what I'm saying is, it's not that devotees that don't do anything, is it? Did you notice that Prabhupada, he didn't do anything? Did he act on some things? I mean, I'm pretty much acting on things from morning till night. I'm so busy. It's not that I'm just tolerating everything and not doing anything. But what's the criteria for whether you're going to act on the desire or you're not going to act on the desire?
Well, illicit drugs that have to come into it. Is
Sure.
that what you mean?
Yeah. So if someone comes up to you and offers you some drugs, then you'd tolerate that. You wouldn't act on it. Like today, I went to a farmer's place to pick up some cow dung. So he offered that to me, so I acted on that. Yes, cow, because why? Cow dung is very favorable for my service to Krishna, which at the moment one of the main services is gardening, growing vegetables for Krishna and flowers. So to do that service, I need fertilizer, and cow dung is the best fertilizer. So he offered me some cow dung, so I acted on it. I didn't tolerate that. I acted on it. But when I got there was some mushrooms growing in the paddock. So he offered me the mushrooms. So in that case, that one, I'd tolerate that one. No, I wouldn't act on that one. But I didn't want to offend him or anything like that. So I picked some mushrooms just to make him feel happy. And then when I got home, I put them in the compost. But I didn't eat it, so because it's not favorable to Krishna. So you act on the desires that are favorable to Krishna's service, and you tolerate the desires or don't act on the desires that are not favorable, like Bob said, illicit drugs, like that. You tolerate those things that are not favorable, and you accept and act on those things that are favorable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the force of desire, if it's not favorable for Krishna's service, then we tolerate that. But if you have you have desires to get initiated by a spiritual master, so you don't want to tolerate that one. You want to act on that. You have desires to distribute Prabhupada's books. No, you act on that. You don't tolerate that. If you have desires to have some deity of Krishna and dress the deities and decorate them with flowers and ornaments and things like that, so you act on that. But it's just the ones that are unfavorable that you tolerate. And anger, like we've discussed, if you didn't get what you want, and then generally after that happens, so we get frustrated and then angry, but you tolerate that. Don't let that come to the point where you get angry. But if we talked about, if Krishna's devotee is being hurt or offended, or if Krishna himself is being blasphemed or criticized or whatever, then we should become angry. So there's different cases there. So it's not that there's never any desires or never any anger, but it's just a matter of which ones are favorable. You act on it, and the unfavorable ones, you tolerate it and you don't act on it. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Mm. And it's saying if you do that, if you learn to tolerate these urges that are not favorable in Krishna's service, then you become happy in this world. So although we have talked about that this material world is a miserable place, however, if we learn to, and this is the subject here in this section, learn to not get our happiness from external sources. That was the previous verse, text 22. To not get our happiness from external sources, but get our pleasure from internal sources, means, a relationship with Krishna, devotional service, then we become happy, even in this world. Not only when you die and get liberated and go back to the spiritual world, you become happy. That's going to be there, of course. But as soon as we switch over in our consciousness to, instead of trying to please our own senses from all these external sources, to let me please Krishna's senses, which is devotional service, then immediately we become happy at that point, straight away. I still remember I was so miserable before I came to Krishna consciousness when I was about 20 years old. And as soon as I came to Krishna consciousness and started acting in devotional service, I became happy. And ever since, I mean, there's been some ups and downs, definitely, there always is. But overall, I'd say, I've maintained quite a happy state of consciousness over the last 30 years. Even I've been through some pretty traumatic situations, but I still was feeling quite happy inside, due to that connection with Krishna. Even though externally it's like a whirlpool going on, but internally I felt happy. So I don't know if any of you would like to say anything about that idea. All good?
All good.
Okay. Okay, so we'll continue with the next one. So now we're on 24. We can read the Sanskrit. Yonta sukonta aramas.
Yo
Yonata
Sonata
Ramas.
So see these what do you call them, apostrophes in front of the ends. So that means there's a silent A there. So the A's been taken out to make the verse flow better. So you join it together with the previous word. So you don't say yo nta. You say yonta. Yonta suko sukon. So you don't say suko nta. You say sukonta. Like that. So yonta sukonta aramas. You want to try that?
Yota Sota Amas.
Tatanta jyotirevaya.
Tatanta Yota
Sayogi Brahma Nirvanam.
Sayogi Brahmana
Brahma Bhuto Digachati.
Brahmabhuta Gachati.
We'll do it once more. Yonta Sukonta Aramas.
Yota Sukota Aramas.
Atanta Jyotirevaya.
Tananta Yote Aha.
Sayogi Brahma Nirvanam.
Yogi Brahma Nivanam.
Brahma Bhuto Digachati.
Brahmabhuto Yugachati.
Hey Sarah, would you like to read the English, please?
One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme.
So this whole section of the Bhagavad Gita is dealing with a liberated person, which in this verse the words here are Brahma Nirvanam, liberation in the Supreme. So here we've been discussing some of the characteristics and behavior and qualities of a liberated person. So this is one of them we've been talking about in this section, is that a liberated person gets their happiness from inside themselves. And what that means, it's not, I mean, it might sound a bit esoteric and a bit airy-fairy. Oh, you know, happiness within, what's that all about? It's nothing very, nothing you can really grasp there. But what that is, what that means, happiness within, is happiness from our relationship with Krishna. And that's something, you know, very solid, how that happiness can be developed, how that relationship with Krishna can be developed. So how is that we can develop our relationship with Krishna and get happiness from that relationship with Krishna? How would you say we can develop that happiness or that relationship with Krishna? What are the ways?
Chanting,
Yeah.
working for Krishna.
Yep. And what we're doing now, hearing about Krishna. You know, I'm talking about Krishna and you're hearing about Krishna. So both those ways, we're developing our relationship with Krishna and we're getting happiness. I mean, have you noticed that you feel happiness when you're chanting Hare Krishna or after you've chanted Hare Krishna, or you feel happiness when you've been hearing about Krishna or when you've been talking about Krishna?
Yep. Just being around like-minded people as
Yeah,
well.
associating with devotees, we get happiness from that. So that's also in connection with Krishna, in relationship with Krishna, or just remembering Krishna. Remembering Krishna, that also can help us in feeling great happiness by remembering Krishna.
Yeah. Trying to make him the center of all your activities, you know?
Yes, center of all of our activities, yeah. That all of our activities are in Krishna consciousness, and that's what it means to be Krishna conscious, to always be conscious or thinking of Krishna throughout our day, in all of our activities. Like I was hearing Prabhupada saying that when a devotee drinks water, he thinks of Krishna, he remembers Krishna. He remembers Krishna. Why does a devotee remember Krishna when he drinks water?
Krishna's water.
Yeah, because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the taste of water. So, especially on the farm here, I think of Krishna a lot. Remember Krishna a lot when I drink water because the water tastes so damn good. It's not like city water with all the chemicals. It's maybe harder to remember Krishna when you drink the city water because it doesn't taste very good. But especially after I've been working outside, oh my God, I'm so thirsty, and I just drink glass after glass of water, and it's just so quenching the thirst and so satisfying. And I'm thinking, wow, this tastes so good. Oh, thank you, Krishna. This is Krishna. This taste, this wonderful taste of water. So there's nothing like drinking pure water. There's nothing that compares. Not any fizzy drink or anything like that. The taste of pure water when you're thirsty, especially, it's just so satisfying and so relishable. And then that taste is Krishna. So then we can remember Krishna. Yeah. So there's 9 processes of devotional service. So all of those 9 processes, any one of them or all of them, whether we're doing one of them or 2 or 3 or 8 or 9, but any of those processes, all of them, they help us in developing our relationship with Krishna. And as a consequence of that, following on from that, the happiness we get from developing in our loving relationship with Krishna. And that's the goal of human life. It's called love of God, Krishna Prema, Krishna Prem. And that's our natural position. That's our natural life, to have a loving relationship with Krishna and always feeling happy. Always feeling happy. One time, a devotee was talking about one of his godbrothers, another disciple of Prabhupada, and was telling Prabhupada that such and such devotee is not happy. He's morose. And Prabhupada said he's not a devotee. Not yet a devotee, because if someone's actually a devotee, they must be happy, because devotee, what does it mean to be a devotee? It means you're devoted to Krishna, you love Krishna, and you're serving Krishna. And if you have that relationship with Krishna, definitely you're going to feel happy. Definitely you're going to feel happy. It doesn't mean necessarily all the external things that go in your life is going to be smooth sailing and everything like that. No. Sometimes terrible things may happen. But because you have that, constant connection of Krishna and remembrance of Krishna, then that's like your anchor. That's like your anchor, and you've got that solid foundation there, and you're feeling so much happiness from that, and that helps you to pass through all these difficulties in life. Just one thing that comes to mind about that. Krishna left this world after he was here 125 years, and Arjuna was still present in this world after Krishna left. And what do you think Arjuna was feeling like when Krishna departed back to the spiritual world? Do you think he was feeling pretty good about that?
Or he probably felt quite distressed.
Not quite distressed. He was very distressed. Yeah, he was extremely distraught, extremely distressed, Because Krishna was his best friend. You know, he has Sakyaras. He's a very friendly relationship with Krishna. So he was feeling very distressed. But then at that time that he was feeling very distressed, he thought over the instructions that Krishna gave him in the Bhagavad Gita. He remembered and reflected on all the instructions that Krishna gave him in the Bhagavad Gita. And this verse, which I'm going to tell you, is from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, telling you what happened when he remembered the instructions that Krishna gave on the Bhagavad Gita. It says there in the Bhagavatam that all the trash in his thoughts subsided. I found that very interesting. And then that's something relevant for all of us, because we all have a lot of trash in our mind, isn't it? So much trash, whether it's fear or anxiety or lamentation or hankering for something or madness, you know, like that, ignorance. You know, there's so much trash in our thoughts, in our mind, so much trashy desires, trashy thoughts in our mind. But it's saying that when he remembered the instructions that Krishna spoke to him in the Bhagavad Gita, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. So subsided means going down, right? So all the trash in his mind, it went down. It went down. And so in that case, in this case, you know, all of his lamentation that he felt that Krishna had departed. And by remembering Krishna's instruction on the Bhagavad Gita, how would that help with that? Like that, you could say, you know, Krishna died, so to speak, although he doesn't die. But how would the instructions of Bhagavad Gita help with that? Like, for example, if someone that you knew, a very close person that you loved, died, how would remembering the instructions of Bhagavad Gita help you with that?
Well, you're just remembering that, you know, that he hasn't really, he's everywhere. He's, you know, within your heart. He's everywhere anyway. And I suppose, especially for Arjuna, you know, that, well, hopefully, you know, all of us will be reunited. So that he's, you know, he's eternal and yeah. But he's, you know, he's not, he has never left us, you know, even though his physical, you know, well, it wasn't a physical form, but his transcendental form may not have been there for Arjuna. He exists in, you know, within, you know, it's and around everything, in everything.
Yes.
As well as, you know, at his supreme abode. But so remembering that, although I can imagine it would have been very hard for Arjuna, the separation of not, you know, having a Krishna there in front of you, and then and that beautiful, amazing association, and then suddenly not having that, it would have been really hard. But that's I suppose that increases the prema and love, you know.
Yeah, that increases it. That feeling of separation from Krishna increases your remembrance of Krishna. You think of Krishna more. And the more you think of Krishna, what will happen? See, when you feel separation from something, then you think about that thing more. Like I've said before, there used to be a devotee on the farm doing farming work there. His name was Sesha. And he lost his mobile phone one time somewhere when he was out on the farm, which is 500 acres, so it's going to be hard to find. So when he had the phone in his pocket, how much do you think he was thinking about it?
Not very often.
Okay. When he lost it, how much do you think he was
On
thinking
his
about it?
mind every minute.
Every minute. So that's all we heard about from him for about 3 days afterwards was, have you seen my phone? Where's my phone? So that's the thing that separation does. It makes you think about the object of your separation more. So now let's go and make Krishna the object of our separation. If you're feeling separation from Krishna, then what will happen?
Very special.
Thinking about him more.
You'll think about him more. And if you think about Krishna more, what will happen?
Chances are you'll go back to Godhead.
Definitely you'll go back to Godhead, but even immediately what will happen?
Well, you'd be a lot happier.
You'll be happier. Why will you be happier?
Because it's just
Just try to think. Okay, you're thinking about Krishna more. What is the nature of Krishna?
love.
Yes. But especially 3 things. Krishna's the constitution of Krishna is 3 things. It's called Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat means eternal.
Yes.
Chit means full of knowledge. And Ananda means bliss. So Krishna's nature is bliss. Now, so if you're thinking about Krishna, it means you're thinking about an object which is full of bliss. If you're thinking about an object that's full of bliss, how do you think that's going to affect you? You're also going to become blissful.
All of it.
Now, if you think about the material body more, how are you going to feel?
Lousy.
Oh, what a bad day. Because what's the nature of the material body? It's temporary. 3 things. It's temporary, full of ignorance, and full of suffering. Asat, Achit, Nirananda. So automatically, the more you think of the body, you're going to become more miserable, or someone else's body, because their bodies are also made of the same nature, full of suffering and ignorance. So the more you think about material objects, you're going to become more morose and more depressed, more miserable. But the more you think about some spiritual object, which nature is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, you're going to become ecstatic. So due to feeling of separation, you think of Krishna more, and thinking of Krishna more, you become more and more ecstatic. So that's the perfection of Krishna consciousness, to feel that separation from Krishna, remember Krishna more, and you become always absorbed in bliss. Okay, so let's read the purport of this one. So, and also in regards to this translation, one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within. So like we were saying, it's not that you get into spiritual life and you stop being active. You stop being so active for your own sense gratification. Yes, that comes down to nil. Your activities for your own pleasure, your own enjoyment. But you become active more for Krishna's enjoyment. Like, people would criticize the Hare Krishnas for giving up material activities, and they sometimes called them lazy. Because they didn't, work in offices and factories and things like that. And so people just naturally presumed that they didn't do anything. But Prabhupada pointed out that devotees work harder than the non-devotees, but we work hard for Krishna. One time, one of these people that think in that way, that devotees are lazy and don't do anything, he saw a bunch of devotees on the street singing and chanting, and he went up to the devotees. He was very angry, because he's thinking, I'm working so hard, and these guys don't work hard and everything like that. They're just lazy bums. And so he went up to them and said, I bet you all haven't worked a good day's work in your whole life. You just bunch of lazy, useless people. And to prove his point, he grabbed one of the men's hands, because how hard a man works, you can see by looking at his hands. because obviously you work with your hands. In most jobs, you work with your hands. So if the hands are very rough and like that, it's a sign that you're working hard. And if they're all like smooth and everything like that, perfect, it's a sign maybe that you're not working much. Although you can't always tell by that, but that's definitely one way that you could say something maybe. So anyway, he grabbed one of the devotees' hands. He grabbed the wrong person's hand. His name was Vishnujan. So Vishnujan, he's one of the most famous Hare Krishna devotees. Actually, if you go to any Rath Yatra parade with Lord Jagannath gets towed around in his chariot, they always put Vishnujan's picture on the chariot. So if you see someone's picture on the chariot, of course, Prabhupada's Murti form is there on the chariot, but there's also a painting, a picture of a person there, and that's that's another devotee. Sorry, I'm getting it confused. Jayananda, but they're both really wonderful devotees. So Jayananda was working hard to build the Rath carts, but this other devotee, Vishnujan, he was always working hard, going out on the streets and chanting and playing mridanga, the drum, and it's not easy because Sarah, you said you went out chanting recently, right, in Cessnock. How long did you chant for?
Oh, it was a good hour.
Good hour. Do you know how many hours they used to chant on the streets in the early days?
Oh my gosh, probably, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe 8 to 12 or something like that. Or
at least 8 hours every day.
Yeah.
And that means playing the drum, playing the cymbals. Do you
Wow.
know what happens if you keep hitting a drum continuously? What's going to happen to your hand?
Oh, they'd toughen up.
Toughen up after lots of blisters and lots of cuts and lots of blood and everything. So he grabbed Vishnujan's hand, who's been hitting the drum for 8 hours a day. He had never, ever in his life seen a hand so beaten up. He had plasters on it and blisters and blood and bruises, and it's blackened and everything. It was just like it had been put through the grinder, his hand. And he looked at his hand and he became stunned. And then he didn't know what to say. And he just went away, just like he completely defeated his own philosophy by just looking at that devotee's hand, completely destroyed his philosophy. And that obviously the devotees were working very hard, but they were working hard for Krishna's pleasure, hitting the drum very hard. You try dancing for hours a day. The only way non-devotees can dance is when they're high on drugs. When they're sober, they can't dance. But the devotees dance, just completely sober. But is it easy to be off the ground? And when a devotees dance, I'm talking about you're not even on the ground. You're in the air. Now, lifting your 60 kgs, 70 kgs, 80 kgs off the ground, is that easy? Have you seen any DVDs or videos or whatever of devotees dancing, especially in the early days?
No,
Have you seen?
I occasionally watch them on YouTube.
Yeah. Have you seen devotees that are not on the ground?
They bounce. They know how to bounce.
Yeah. So is that easy?
No.
That takes a lot of energy. That's a lot of work. Most people couldn't do that. But and spinning around and hands are up in the air, and that's all work. It's taking energy. And there's one devotee in Chaitanya Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes named, his name escapes me right now, but he danced continuously for 72 hours. So he must have been in ecstasy, because you definitely couldn't do that on the material platform. So he was definitely in ecstasy. So he danced continuously for 72 hours.
Wow.
So it's not that devotees aren't active, but their activities are all centered around pleasing Krishna, and the happiness that comes from pleasing Krishna. Because that's the thing. We're talking here about the devotee feeling happiness, but where does the devotee's happiness come from? It comes from after Krishna's happy. You know how the process is. You serve Krishna's senses. Krishna's senses are satisfied. Means Krishna's happy. Krishna's happy, and who are you? By the way, who are we all?
Servants.
We're all servants, and the servants are all?
Servants of the servants.
Yeah. Who are all part and parcel of?
The body.
No, part and parcel of?
This Krishna.
Of Krishna. Yeah, just like remember the part of the body is part, I mean the hand is part and parcel of the body, right? So that's the example. So just like the hand is part and parcel of the body, so the nature of the hand is to serve the whole body, right? So we're part of God, so our nature is to serve God. And when you do that, that's our real duty. That's our real nature, to serve God. When you do that, automatically you become happy. Like when the hand puts the food in the mouth, it goes to the stomach, and then the food comes back to the hand. That's where the hand gets its happiness from serving the whole body. If the hand thinks, I'm just going to eat the mango without feeding the body, or eat the halava without feeding the body, it's never going to get nourished. So, but if you put the mango or the halava in the body, then the hand gets the mango, gets the halava, indirectly like that. So that's how it works. So we do some service to please Krishna. Krishna's happy. Krishna's pleased by the service. And then because we're part of him, we also become pleased. We also become happy. You know, so that's how we get our happiness from Krishna's happiness, Krishna being happy. So don't think that spiritual life means stopping activities. It doesn't. It means stopping activities based on our own enjoyment, our own sense gratification, but it means beginning activities based on Krishna's enjoyment. Beginning activities based on Krishna's enjoyment. And one time a reporter criticized that, oh, Swamiji, I heard that your disciples only sleep 6 hours a day. As a criticism, you know, that the guru was exploiting the disciples. And one of the disciples piped up and said, but our guru only sleeps 3 hours a day. You know, meaning that, you know, he's working harder than them. Isn't it? That's hard, isn't it? I mean, you try that. You try sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a day, and no one can do that. That's hard work, you know, staying awake. So, and you know, and what is he doing all those waking hours? Is he watching TV? No, he's doing it, you know, fully activities to please Krishna. He's traveling around. I've been reading one book called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami by Shyama Sundar. It's one of his disciples. Writing 3 books about his travels with Prabhupada, and one particular time he was coming to Australia, so he'd come, I think, from Japan or somewhere like that, and he came to Australia, and he mentioned that the servant mentioned that they arrived at the Sydney Temple, not where it is now, a different place. They arrived at the Sydney Temple, and the plan was they were just going to sleep, because they hadn't slept for Prabhupada hadn't slept, the others had, but Prabhupada hadn't slept for 72 hours, means 3 days. He hadn't slept for 3 days because they'd been traveling and everything like that. and so busy. And the plan was they were just going to go there and sleep. But the devotees were so fired up, so enthusiastic. They just wanted this, finally met their spiritual master, and they wanted to show him around the temple and show him all their, show him the deities and show him their ashram and show him their book room and show. They had a bus. They had a double-decker bus. A double-decker bus saying, what did it say? Hare Krishna movement, the positive alternative. That's what it said on the side of the bus. And Prabhupada, he was so ecstatic to see that bus, that they were traveling all around Australia preaching and doing Harinam, chanting on the streets and distributing Back to Godhead magazines and that in this bus. And he said, I could live in this bus, Prabhupada said. And they became so enlivened like that. And but that's the thing, you know, he hadn't slept for 72 hours. And, you know, imagine that happened to us. All we'd be thinking about is having a snooze for another 72 hours. But Prabhupada just kept going. He just kept going. He didn't think about himself at all. He was just so active for Krishna. And he wasn't acting for himself. You know, and for his own bodily pleasure of, you know, sleeping and eating, and, you know, he'd hardly eaten anything and not even slept, you know. But, you know, he's very active for Krishna and not very active for himself. So that's what happens more and more as one becomes liberated. And even the 6 Goswamis, that they barely slept. Most of them, the 6 Goswamis, the immediate disciples of Lord Chaitanya, they only slept 1 or 2 hours a day. And sometimes they would eat something, maybe every couple of days they might eat like a bowl of chickpeas or a bit of yogurt or something like that every 1 or 2 days, if they've chanted their prescribed number of rounds. If they didn't finish their prescribed rounds, their vow, they all made a vow to chant a certain number of rounds. If they didn't finish their vow to chant their rounds, then no sleep, mate, no food, mate. That was the rule. First of all, you do all your work to please Krishna. If you don't do that, then you don't get anything for yourself. Only if you finish chanting your rounds, then you can eat something and sleep a little bit. So, and it's not that they made a vow to chant 16 rounds. Most of them had made a vow to chant at least at least 128 rounds. Some of them had made vows to chant like 192 rounds a day.
Wow.
Like Haridas Thakur chanting 192 rounds a day. Some of the other ones are chanting at least 128 rounds a day. And it's not that was the only thing they were doing. They were also talking about Krishna and preaching and you know, traveling around and writing books. And they used to write on leaves, because they didn't 500 years ago, this is 500 years ago, they didn't have printing presses. So they used to write on dried leaves with you know, natural ink. You know, yeah, was that there in your days, Bob? Did they ever have any of those quills? Any of those quills with ink in them?
When I was in Cambodia?
Have you seen those before with like just the ink and the quill?
And writing on palm
leaves?
Palm leaves.
Yeah, so they used to do that. So that was also there in their day. And if they'd finished all that, then they might, if they're lucky, sleep something or eat something. You know, so very active for Krishna, so active, oh my God. And, you know, materialistic people are nowhere near as active as liberated people. Liberated people are more active. Then, of course, there is another category of people on the path of liberation where they do stop all external activities. You know, and they might hide away in the Himalayas or some forest in Cambodia or something like that, hide away there and just do silent meditation or whatever. So yeah, they're only active within and they don't do any external activities hardly at all. But And in Krishna consciousness, it's the same thing, because although we are acting with the body, but all those activities with the body that a devotee does, it's all for Krishna's pleasure. It's not for our own. So they're not material activities at all. The principle is we have to stop material activities, because that's what's entangling us in karma. Because we've been reading about that in the 3rd chapter, how we get entangled in fruitive activities in karma. When we do activities for our own enjoyment, we get entangled and bound up by the reactions. So definitely we have to stop that. So some transcendentalists, they'll stop all activities to avoid that karmic bondage. So we're also doing that, even though it seems like we're not, because we're so busy. And some people think, well, that we're not transcendentalists because we are so active, seemingly externally, but because it's all centered around Krishna's pleasure, it's still transcendental. It's more transcendental, it's more transcendental. There's those people that are stopping materialistic activities and just doing their meditation and so forth is not as good. Why isn't it as good? Why is that person that just stops all activities and just focuses on that spiritual meditation, transcendental meditation for their own benefit, not as good as the devotee that's active and preaching and so forth?
Because they're not doing it for Krishna?
They might. Their goal is also to please God by meditating on Him. Yeah, but they're not as good. Why?
I remember reading in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna said we should be working, we should be involved in some sort of form of service, because that's having with for him. But
Is it anything to do with
Yes, Bob?
Is it anything to do with being attached to the outcome? Like, instead of doing it for Krishna, you said they're doing it more for themselves.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think also I recall those people who, like you were saying, you mentioned who might be in the Himalayas as sadhus, just is performing severe austerities. It just takes a long, long time to practice those severe austerities. It's just that's what is that, but whereas bhakti yoga is a more direct path of Krishna.
Everything that both of you are saying is correct, but it's not what I'm looking for. So let's look at the 11th chapter, text 55. 11th chapter, text 55. Okay. First one there, he can read the English.
My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculations, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me.
And read, Sarah, do you want to read the first sentence of the purport?
Anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna Loka planet in the spiritual sky and be intimately connected with the supreme personality Krishna must take this formula as stated by the Supreme himself.
And one more sentence.
Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The
essence of Bhagavad Gita. Because it's showing us how to approach Krishna, how to go back to the spiritual world. This verse is showing us what's required. And what's required? The last thing. Who is friendly to every living being. That means you have to preach. If you just go to the Himalayas, where's your being friendly towards every living being? You're just all of it's you're going to get your backside out of here and go back to Godhead. But what about everyone else? Going to rot in hell, mate. You don't give a stuff about them.
Yes.
Why you don't give a stuff about them? Will Krishna be happy with that?
No.
You have to love your other brothers and sisters. Then the Father will be happy.
Yeah.
Sure, you're going back to your Father, very good. But what about all your brothers and sisters that continue to rot here? The Father will be more happy if you try to help your fallen brothers and sisters to come back home too. Then you become more dear. Sure, it's good. If you go back to your Father in the spiritual world, that's very good. But if you can bring another 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 back with you, what will your Father think about that? And then he'll be even more happy with you. So, what does it mean to be friendly to every living being? It means help them become Krishna conscious. You indicated that, Bob, but it's a kind of selfishness. If you're just working on your own spiritual advancement, then it's all about you. It's still good because you're trying to go back to the spiritual world, but it is still a kind of selfishness. But for a Krishna conscious person, you take it another step further, that we forget about ourselves. We don't really care whether we go back to Godhead or not. We try to help others to go back to Godhead. And automatically, by doing that, we automatically can go back to Godhead, because that's what Krishna wants. If you do that, you get a big tick from Krishna. You're friendly towards every living being. So more better than just stopping all external activities and going to the forest and meditating to make your own self liberated. More better than that is to try to help other people become liberated. Of course, you still have to work on yourself. It doesn't mean, I'm just going to help everyone else and I'm not going to chant my rounds anymore and I'm not going to, read Prabhupada's books anymore or whatever. No, you still have to work on yourself. But side by side, you're working on yourself, you have to try to help others whatever you can. And in one way or another. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a book distributor, although that's very good. But there's other ways of helping other people become Krishna conscious. For example, give you a clue, there's 3 main ways you can help people become Krishna conscious.
You can seed them. Prasad.
Yes, prasadam.
Yes.
Give them books.
Prasadam. Books, yeah, prasadam books.
Introduce them to chanting.
Yeah, chanting, like the devotees did, chanting out loudly in Cessnock, or chanting, out loudly in Newcastle or whatever like that, so other people can hear. And in fact, when you chant loudly, not only the souls in the human bodies benefit, but it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, even the non-moving living entities benefit by hearing the loud chanting the holy name. Who are the non-moving living entities?
I'm thinking plants.
Yeah, plants and
Plants
things.
and
There's also life. There's also souls. Pardon me, souls within the plants, even within the rocks. Prabhupada said. Some rocks grow. Did you know that?
No.
Like some mountains, they get higher. Did you know that?
Yes.
That means they're growing.
Isn't the Himalayas?
Scientists will say that's just tectonic plates moving or whatever like that, but actually they're growing. And some of them are actually reducing in height too. So that's a downhill growth, right? Our bodies do that too, right? Yeah. We start off, isn't it? We get taller and taller, and after a while we start getting shorter and shorter. But that means there's a soul in there. There's some changes taking place. So wherever you see some external body and there's some changes taking place, that's indicating that there's a soul there. But yeah, some bodies, they can't move much, like the plants and creepers and flowers and that. But they grow and reproduce and do different things. So definitely a soul there. like that. So they benefit by devotees loudly chanting Hare Krishna like that. So, and Krishna's very pleased when you do something for the benefit of other living entities, because he loves. Who does Krishna love? Does Krishna only loves the devotees?
Loves everyone.
No.
He loves every living entity, because every living entity's his child, is part and parcel of him. So the more we can help other living entities reconnect with the Supreme Father, then the Supreme Father will be more happy with us. You know, and just let it happen in a very natural way. As you start to love Krishna more and enjoy Krishna consciousness and get happiness from Krishna consciousness, naturally you'll want to share that with others. It's a very natural thing. You don't have to be fanatical about it, you know, and fire and brimstone like the Christians do, you know, surrender to Jesus or you're going to hell or anything like that. No, but just naturally, you know, you feel so good in your Krishna consciousness, and naturally you want to share that with others because you want to help others to feel good. Like was said before, you know, that the nature of a devotee is that paradukha dukhi, means when others are unhappy, we become unhappy. And parasukha sukhi, when others are happy, we feel happy. So that's the nature of any soft-hearted soul, any advanced soft-hearted soul. Naturally, you don't like to see anyone unhappy, and you feel unhappy, and you want to do something about it. You want to help them to become happy. And when they become happy by Krishna consciousness, you feel really happy, you know. I mean, that's why I like the cooking classes so much, because when I do the cooking class and then I see people eat the food and I see them become happy, and when I see them become happy, then I become happy. So I become happy. So we're all connected. We're all related. And the more Krishna's happy, the more we become happy. And the more others become happy, we become happy too. We're all in it together. We're all connected. We're not islands like that. We're not independent. We're all depending. What is it called? Interdependent. We're interdependent like that. That's very nice. Okay, so let's read the purport. So back to text 24 then, 5th chapter. Just one more thing in the translation, just want to say, so, you know, immediately you tolerate the desires for your own sense gratification and just act on desires to please Krishna's senses by engaging in devotional service. And then naturally, like I said, Krishna becomes happy, you're going to become happy. And as soon as that's happening, you're engaging in devotional service, Krishna's pleased with you, and you're feeling happy, then you're liberated from that point. And that point might be when you're 10, you know, if you come to Krishna consciousness, or you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 65 or 70 or whatever, or half an hour before you're dead. You know, it's so, whatever the point is, you're liberated. As soon as you're pleasing Krishna's senses, he's happy with you, and you're feeling happy that you're serving Krishna, you're liberated from that point, as long as you're on that platform. Of course, if you give up your service to Krishna and go back to material sense gratification, you're not liberated again. So it's not a fixed thing. You have free choice always. You can go from one day you are not liberated to the next day you're liberated. And then the next day you are not liberated. You know what I'm saying? You know, like you can go from being a non-devotee to a devotee, and then back to a non-devotee, and then back to a devotee. You know, it's not fixed. So that's where our free choice is. You engage in devotional service, you please Krishna, then you become happy, you're liberated. But you stop doing devotional service, then Krishna's not happy, you're not happy, then you're not liberated again. Okay? So as soon as you do engage in the full devotional service, you're liberated. And then what it's saying here, and ultimately he attains the supreme. Now, here's something interesting. You engage in devotional service. Then, due to your misusing your free choice, you stop doing devotional service. You give up Krishna consciousness. You go back to material consciousness. But you're still going to attain the Supreme. But it might take a bit longer. That's the but. But it might take a bit longer. It might take a bit longer. You probably, because you told me a week or two ago, Bob, you were reading the 6th chapter, right?
Yep.
Yep. So it says there in the end of the 6th chapter, one of Arjuna's doubts is, what if I'm not successful on this path? What if I'm not successful? I gave up materialistic life for spiritual life. And then what if I don't succeed at spiritual life? Then he says, am I like a riven cloud? Do you remember reading that, Bob? Where the words were, Arjuna says, will I be like a riven cloud? Do you know what a riven cloud is?
No, go on. No, I don't.
A riven cloud is like, you've got a big cloud in the sky, right? A big cloud. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of the cloud will break off from the big cloud. Now, when the small cloud breaks away from the big cloud, sometimes the wind will smash that little cloud to bits and it just becomes nothing. There's just no cloud anymore. It's gone. It left the big cloud, and because it's so small now, the wind can just
break it up easy.
Break it up. So that's called a riven cloud. It's broken off the main one and got beaten up. So we're fully into materialistic life and everything like that, and we're fitting in with what everyone's doing, and we're doing well and everything. But then at a certain point you say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to give up all this and I'm going to surrender to Krishna. Okay? So you've like broken away. And then Arjuna's doubt is, well, okay, I've broken away now. There's no turning back anymore. So, but if I'm successful in Krishna consciousness, very good. I'm going to go back to Godhead. But what if I'm not successful? I don't become a pure devotee. Due to my own, weaknesses or whatever like that, I don't become a pure devotee. So I haven't been successful in materialistic life, and then I haven't been successful in spiritual life. So where am I? I'm in like no man's land. So that's Arjuna's doubt. I'm not in the materialistic world. I'm not in the spiritual world. Where am I? So, and Krishna answers that doubt, says, the unsuccessful yogi, so he hasn't become 100% perfect when he dies. He's not 100% yet. Maybe he's 50% or whatever. So he's not 100% successful, so he hasn't gone back to Godhead. So Krishna says in the next verse that if the unsuccessful yogi dies after a short practice of Krishna consciousness, he takes birth in a rich family or a family of brahmanas, means intellectuals, priests. And that means you get a better birth. You get a better birth, and that means you can pick up where you left off in your last life. And then he says, if, however, you're unsuccessful after a long practice of yoga, that means you were more advanced in Krishna consciousness than the other one. Then you take birth in a family of transcendentalists. That means a family of Vaishnavas, pure devotees. Prabhupada says that's the best birth in the material world. You get born in a family, your parents are pure devotees of Krishna. And Prabhupada said, I had that birth. And he said, my guru had that birth. So both Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Prabhupada had a birth in a family of Vaishnavas, pure devotees of Krishna. So that's the most fortunate birth position to be in the material world. And that means you can easily continue on where you left off and complete your path of perfection. So even then, saying that he says ultimately he attains the Supreme. So once you start the process once you start the process of liberation by Krishna consciousness, then you will ultimately achieve the Supreme. If you continue Krishna consciousness right till the end of this life, there's a good chance you'll definitely go back to Godhead at the end of this life. If you haven't become, if you give up Krishna consciousness before the end of life, and go back to materialistic life, you may have to take birth again, but it will be a better birth. It'll be a better birth, and you'll continue on like that. So, like Krishna says in the second chapter, there's no loss or diminution on this path. And a little advancement protects one from the greatest fear. So what's the greatest fear that Krishna's mentioning? And Prabhupada explains the greatest fear is that after you die, you fall down to the lower species of life. That's a bummer. It means next life you become a cockroach or a dog or a tree or something. That's a bummer. But even a little bit of Krishna consciousness, even if you chant for a day or a month or a year or 10 years, that's going to save your butt from that. Now that's cool, isn't it? We should be like, oh, that's a relief. That's a relief. That's a relief.
What's the opposite word to bloop?
Bloop, fall down. The opposite word is this, nirvana, liberation. Nirvana. You're going upwards. Because bloop means going down. So the opposite is going upwards. So that's this Brahma Nirvana. So that's in this verse. Brahma Nirvana means liberation in the Supreme. Brahma means spiritual. Brahma, the word Brahma means spiritual. Brahma. Don't mix it up with Brahma, the first person in the universe, first living being. His name is Brahma. That's a long A. Brahma, that's a long A at the end. This is Brahma. So Brahma means spiritual. Just like the spiritual light that radiates from Krishna's body is called the Brahman. The Brahman. That's the spiritual light that radiates from Krishna's body. So Brahma means spiritual, and Nirvana means liberated. You're freed. You're freed from the material world, and you're going into the spiritual world. Like Buddhists use this term a lot, nirvana, but they have a different idea about what it is. But the word nirvana is actually an interesting word. Vana actually means forest. Vana, V-A-N-A, means forest. Nirvana means outside the forest. So many times this material world, material existence, is compared to a forest, a very dark, dangerous forest. Like what's a big forest near you're in the Blue Mountains, Sarah, that's a big one. What happened if you got lost in the Blue Mountains? How would that be?
Not good.
Not good. So the material world is like that. You get lost, and you just struggling in there, and you're suffering, and especially in some forests, like in India, there's wild animals, there's tigers and lions and snakes and scorpions, and it's dark, and under the trees it's all dark, and you could fall down and break your leg or whatever, or there's many cases of people falling in wells and things like that and dying, and it's just a horrible life, and you can't find your way out. The thing with being in a forest is that one of the features of being in a forest is you can't find out a way out. You can't find a way out because it all looks the same, right? If you're in the middle of a forest, whichever 360 degrees is all just trees around you, it all looks the same. How do you know where home is? You can't find your home. So like that, sometimes the material is compared to an ocean because that's a similar experience. If you get dropped in the middle of an ocean, you're buggered, and also if you're in the middle of a forest, you're buggered. So you're trapped and you can't find your way out. So sometimes the material is compared to a very big, dangerous forest, and liberation is nirvana, means getting outside that forest. So Buddhists use that word of getting free from bondage. They call that nirvana. Of course, their idea of what is nirvana outside this material world is different. Their idea is that of liberation for them means nothingness, just entering into a void. Entering into a void. For them, that's their understanding of nirvana, or liberation from this material world, out of the forest, is entering into a void, just nothing. But our idea of nirvana is that we enter into the spiritual world where there's unlimited spiritual varieties. Krishna's there, Radharani's there, the gopis are there, the cows, the peacocks, the lotuses, and we have a spiritual body, and everyone else has a spiritual body, and we have loving relationships, and we have friends there, and family members, and lovers, and it's everything's there. So there's a lot of variety there. But their idea of getting out of the material world is there's nothing, just a void. So different, but they use the same term, nirvana. Okay, let's read the purport. I'm just gonna you start reading, Sarah, and oh no, Bob, you have a read.
This is text 24, isn't it?
Yes, text 24.
Yep. Short purport.
Okay. Unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. He can therefore sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. This state is called Brahma Bhuta, attaining which one is assured of going back to Godhead, back to home.
Wonderful. So that's a very good point. Very good point. Prabhupada's first point is, unless you can enjoy, relish happiness from within, how can you give up running after external happiness? It's not going to be possible. Not going to be possible.
Abhay, did I pronounce that word Brahma Bhuta? Is that how you pronounce it?
No, it's more Bhuta. Brahma Bhuta. So that's why it's got a line above the U.
Bhuta.
So it's a long U. Bhuta.
Bhuta.
Brahma Bhuta. It's not Bhuta. It's Bhuta. Yeah, Brahma Bhuta. Yeah. Self-realized person. So that means self-realization, and Prabhupada explains that in the word for word, Brahma Bhuta, being self-realized. So like I said, Brahma means spiritual. So Bhuta, that's the living entity. So when the living entity realizes his spiritual nature as a servant of God, as a soul servant of God, when we realizes I am Brahman, I am Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi means I am a soul. So when we realize that I'm not the body, that I am a soul, and the soul is a servant of Krishna, that means that's the Brahma Bhuta stage. You've realized, self-realization. You've realized your spiritual nature, that you're not the body, that you're a spiritual being. So that's Brahma Bhuta. So on that platform, you're enjoying your loving relationship with Krishna, and then you can give up, these materialistic pursuits for external happiness. Otherwise, how are you going to be able to give it up? It's not going to be possible. Unless you're getting a higher taste, unless you're giving up a higher taste, how are you going to give up the lower taste? How are you going to give up the lower taste, And I mean, I've experienced that myself. Sometimes, I'm not getting so much of the higher taste, and then you feel more pressure from the lower taste coming back. But when you're getting more of the higher taste, then there's no interest in the lower taste. It's like insignificant. It's like disgusting, or just no value, no interest. And so unfortunately in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, what we tend to do is oscillate between a higher taste and a lower taste. We're not able to maintain getting the higher taste all the time. If we could do that, then there's no interest in the lower taste. So that's important. If we want to avoid, and obviously that is important, we want to, like it's saying, retire from external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness. So we definitely want to get out of that. We want to retire from this external sense gratification, because like it says in text 22, it's the source of misery. This external sense pleasure, trying to get happiness from the senses, it's just the source of misery. In text 22, Krishna explains this, because it's temporary. It just has a beginning and an end. So if we're intelligent, why are we doing that to ourselves? We keep running after things that just give us temporary happiness, and at the end of the day, we lose it and it's all gone, and then you're suffering and you're miserable. So definitely want to get away from that. But the best way, sustainable way to get away from that, we have to be maintaining this higher taste. Means every day we should be chanting and enjoying our chanting, and every day we're hearing about Krishna and we're enjoying hearing about Krishna, and every day we're offering our food to Krishna and we're enjoying offering our food to Krishna, or whatever it might be, serving the deities or attending artis or associating with devotees, and we're enjoying associating with devotees. So whatever it is, we want to be consistently serving Krishna in ways that are very satisfying and pleasing, and that we really enjoy it. We should really enjoy Krishna consciousness, because if you don't enjoy Krishna consciousness, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? You're going to be forced to go back to material enjoyment, because you can't live. The point is, you can't live without enjoyment. The soul's nature is to enjoy. It's called rasa. Well, I can't remember. There's a verse about it, but then it's saying that the verse is saying the nature of the soul is to enjoy rasas, to get pleasure that we get from relationships. So it's either from our spiritual relationships with Krishna, it's generating rasa or pleasure, or from the material relationships. We're trying to squeeze some enjoyment out of a relationship with money or a car or a partners or whatever like that, out of their job and position and power and their fame and fortune, and we're trying to squeeze some rasa out of that, enjoyment out of that relationship. But the problem with that rasa, with material rasa or relationships, is temporary. It's all temporary. So it comes to an end and it leads to suffering. Whereas spiritual rasa, or the pleasure we get from those relationships, is eternal, and it gets better and better and better. So we have to, if we want to avoid falling back down, blooping, one of Bob's favorite words, bloop. So if we want to avoid blooping, we have to enjoy our daily practices of Krishna consciousness. And if we're not there yet, we have to find out things that we can enjoy doing for Krishna, that we really enjoy doing those things, whether it might be painting for Krishna, or talking about Krishna, or chanting Hare Krishna, or cooking for Krishna, or making a garden for Krishna, or helping other people come to Krishna, or like teaching devotees how to be more healthy for Krishna, isn't it? Like Bob's into the health industry, but connecting the health industry with Krishna, and that's easy, because like Prabhupada gave a list of things that are very important, one being the most important, and 5 I think one time there was a list of about 5 things, 5 being the least important. Do you know what was number 1?
Number 1 in what?
For a devotee, most important thing for a devotee to do.
To chant?
That was number 2.
Was eat well, prasadam.
To love Krishna?
No. Number 1 was look after your health.
Oh.
You can't believe it, can you? The Guru Prabhupada is saying number 1 most important thing for a devotee to do is look after your health. Number 2 is chant Hare Krishna. And we say, what? What do you mean number 2, Hare Krishna? Hare Krishna is the main thing. But you try doing the main thing if you don't have your health.
Well, that's
How
right.
are you going to chant Hare Krishna without health?
Yeah.
I've had that experience. One time I was so stupid when I first joined Krishna Conscious. I was such a mental speculator. I had all these concoctions, mental speculations about what's good for your health. And I was thinking, oh, this prasadam is not healthy, that there's too much dairy products and sugar and stuff like that. I'm going to have more healthy food. So I go on all these fads, and one of them was that raw milk is very good for your health. So I started drinking raw milk, and one time it had too much bacteria in it. It nearly killed me. I had stuff coming out of me from all directions.
Wow.
And to say it politely, and I nearly died. And how do you think my chanting was at that time?
Not good.
Not good at all.
Not good at all. I remember my spiritual master, he told me he had a triple heart bypass at one point.
Gosh.
Triple heart bypass. Do you know what happened to his chanting at that time?
Knowing him, he'd still continue while he was...
No, you can't. You can't chant. I mean, for a lot of the time, you're not even conscious. I mean, when the operation's going on and then after the operation, you don't know where you are. You're not even conscious. You can't chant. It's not that you don't want to chant, but you can't chant. So for a period after during and after the operation, he didn't chant his 16 rounds. Do you know what he did? He kept track of all the rounds he didn't chant. And when he was in good health later on, when his health got better, he caught up. So every day he chanted some extra rounds.
Oh.
Say, he missed out on, say, for example, I don't know what it was, say 300 rounds. So every day he did an extra, say, 3 rounds in 100 days, you've caught up. So, but he had to catch up. But the point was that he couldn't chant when his health wasn't good. And when my health wasn't good, I couldn't chant either. So Prabhupada's very smart to say that number 1 important thing is look after your health. So even like Bob is all into health. Now, all you have to do is connect that with Krishna consciousness, and then you're doing the main thing. Of course, if you have very good health and you don't chant, that's useless too. If you try to chant but you don't look after your health, you're stuffed. And if you look after your health and you don't chant, you're stuffed. You have to do both. But the point is, the first priority, you want to be Krishna conscious, you have to look after your health. And then you chant with good health. With your good health, then you chant good rounds like that. And then, the number 3 probably was, I can't remember, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or something like that, and number 4, associating with devotees and all this kind of thing. So there's a whole list, but it's a very important thing, health. So, but you're looking after your health for Krishna's pleasure, so you can serve Krishna. How are you going to serve Krishna without good health? You can't serve Krishna, if the material body's not working. So you want to keep it working, but you're not doing it for your pleasure. Like previously, I looked after my health for my enjoyment, but now I look after my health for Krishna's enjoyment. So there's a big difference. So that's the thing. And, if you're really into that, and then just look after your own health so you can do more Krishna consciousness. activities, you know, and help other devotees look after their health. I know there was one senior devotee, he's a sannyasi, he really took it up as a service to help devotees around the world have better health. And he identified in the diet of most devotees one thing that's not very good for their health. Do you know what that is?
Is it sugar?
No. They eat too much paneer. Too much paneer. Paneer is very good, but not too much.
Yeah.
You know, so not every day, and, you know, big chunks of it every day. So it's just too much for the body to handle. So like that, he was trying to help them with their health by saying, you know, just pull back on the paneer a bit, just have it on Sundays. Actually, Prabhupada was so brilliant because he was also conscious about everyone's health. In the early days of ISKCON, they had very rich food 1 day a week. When was that?
Sundays?
That was a Sunday. They called it the Love Feast. That was like 20 items. 2 different kinds of rice. One had paneer in it and everything, and 3 different, a dry curry, a wet curry, and it's like puris, fried bread, and samosas and pakoras and chutneys and everything. There was like a list of 20 things, and nectar drinks and lassis and halava and gulab jamuns and sweet rice, and that was all together on 1 day. So it was a big feast. And you can imagine, talk about this,